mozidesigner here with another Unreal Engine tutorial. This tutorial will cover the topic of lighting from a designer's point of view, meaning I'm not a lighting artist, but I know the basics of Unreal Engine lighting to pull off an interesting look set, but I don't know the detailed technicalities of lighting per se, if that makes sense. In a way, if you do like lighting, it's a very good skill set to have, and people really need lighting artists, and the lighting artists out there, I highly respect your craft. You guys are killing it. Anywhere, any industry, any game, lighting artists are invaluable. But as a designer, you should know the basic concepts of lighting, maybe to present an idea to your lighting artist if you have one, to say, hey, I'm thinking this idea, can you help me make it better? Or if you're just making visual scenes on your own, how you can light them quickly to get a desired effect. So this is more of a designer's point of view of lighting and the way I do lighting. So if there's any lighting artists out there watching this, please correct me of any mistakes I do in the comments below. Without further ramblings, let's dive into lighting from a designer's perspective. So I have this scene here, and this scene is available for free. You want to go to your Epic Games launcher, and if you do not have this scene, click on Learn. And this is one of the included examples by Epic, and it's the Blueprints example. Download it. It'll show up in your vault. Create the project. Once the project is loaded, double click it. And at the moment I'm using 4.2.5.3 of Unreal Engine. And you'll be greeted with this scene here. It may look like this. I just have game mode on, which is just hitting the G key. So we're going to be using this existing scene to practice lighting from a designer's point of view. So to get started, let's save this as a new file. So if we make mistakes, we can come back to where we left off in the original scene. Save current as, or we can call it Learn Lighting. Alright, so now we can be completely destructive with this. And once you save it and load it, the scene has some darkness to it because it needs to be rebuilt. But don't worry about that, because we're going to delete some things before we rebuild. The first thing we want to get rid of is the custom skybox the scene has. It's very cool that it has one, but we don't need it for the purpose of this tutorial. But in a game setting, a custom skybox might be valuable to your lighting artist because it already matches the scene, the tone, the contrast, and things like that. So let them do their job. But for the sake of this tutorial, we don't need the custom skybox. We'll be using the default Unreal skybox. Type sky in the world outliner. I keep saying skybox, that's the old way of doing things. But sky sphere in this case, just select it, hit delete. Next we want to go to type in the word light. You'll see these blueprint God rays. Just select those, delete. Delete the directional light. Do not delete the light mass importance volume, leave that there. Select the point lights, delete. Next we want to type in reflection or REF before you type the word reflection. And there's a bunch of sphere capture reflections. We don't need those right now. And we want to delete the fog. So type in the word fog, height fog, and delete the fog sheets as well. Next we're going to go to Window, Place Actors, Lights, put down a directional light, and we're going to go back to our Place Actors. I'm going to put down a skylight, and we're going to put down, well, before we put it down, we want to go back to our world outliner, type in the word post. As a post-process volume, delete that. Window, Place Actors, volumes, post-process volume. And lastly, window. Well, let's just keep these three things for now. So we have directional lighting, skylight, and our post-process. Before we build the lighting one time, we need to change some settings on our directional light and our skylight. With the directional light selected, if you come to the details panel, you have the mobility section. There's three settings you can do for the directional light. You can make it static, which basically says it's going to be fully baked and it's fastest rendering. So it'll render fast, but you can't edit the light unless you keep rebuilding every single time, which is time consuming. You can keep it stationary, which it is now. You can't move it, meaning you can move it in the editor, but you can't move it in game. You can't affect the direction if you wanted to. The lighting is kind of partially baked, and you only get dynamic shadows from movable objects. So any objects that move in front of the dynamic light will generate a moving shadow. Lastly, you can make the entire light movable, which will make it totally dynamic. You have dynamic shadows, but it renders the slowest. But the first 2 points are very beneficial for creating visual scenes. So we want to make this movable. Same for our skylight. I want this to be movable, and you'll see why. So with that in mind, save. Let's build lighting only. So one thing I forgot to do before rebuilding the lighting is let's save our scene. Let's go to File, New Level, Default, and just in the world outliner, type Sky, Sky Sphere, copy. Go back to our example, edit, paste. So now we have the generic Unreal Sky Sphere. And in the Sky Sphere properties, it says directional light actor. It says none. Connect your directional light to it. And the second option below it says colors determined by sun position. Now let's rebuild. Alright, now that we're done rebuilding, the scene has more light in it. So the first thing I want to do is go to my skylight and set the intensity to 0. I don't want it affecting the scene at the moment. So as you can see, just hitting 0 and hitting enter, automatically the scene has become very dark. I didn't have to rebuild lighting because my skylight is 100% dynamic. Whatever I change now, I see instantly. So it saves a lot of time for me making a change, rebuild, making a change, rebuild. It's much faster. But yes, when we want to rebuild the scene at the end, it'll take a little longer to render. But as we're working, we don't have to keep rebuilding lighting. That's why I make them movable, so I get fully dynamic light, skylight, and fully dynamic directional light. As you can see here, if I select my directional light, start rotating it, look at that, the light and the shadows are moving together. I do not have to rebuild lighting to see the change each and every single time. And since I connected it to my sky sphere, the direction of the light is permanent. The color is determined by sun position. So if I lower this down for nice long shadows, go back to my sky sphere, hit refresh material, the sky has automatically changed color to match the direction of the light. I have not changed the color of the light, I'm just changing the direction. So with this in mind, with a nice low light, you should have some obviously kind of sunset hues, which the editor has rated for me out here. But it may not be the sunset hues that I need. But it's a good start. Now, lighting itself is a very complex topic you can go really deep into, and that's why people become lighting artists, because they know the fine details of light, composition, color, contrast, saturation, offsets, all the deep knowledge that is required for lighting in cinematography or game development. So the best way to learn lighting is to look at examples in games, concept art, and things like that to see how light and shadow is used, what color contrasts are used, basic understanding of color contrasts and what colors complement each other, what colors don't complement each other or contrast with each other. So that's a whole deep dive, which I do not have time for, but I highly recommend doing the research on because it'll help you create better lighting for your scenes. And always talk to your lighting artist. If you know them, they will guide you even further on this topic. But for now, I'm going to keep things simple and light this scene in a way you can understand. And like I said, I'm not a lighting artist. I know what knobs to pull, but sometimes I don't know what the knobs are actually doing or the technical knowledge of the knobs. And I'm like, it looks cool. So that's kind of the approach I'm going to help you guys with.